we will get started, and I'm going to assume that others will join. Well, folks, welcome to this session of K1. For those of you that have not joined the call before, K1 is kind of the network of brokerages, Keller Williams Elevate, Living, and Legacy Group, and we get together once or twice a month to talk about a topic of interest so that we can all be sharper and run better businesses together, because that's ultimately the name of the game. Just a quick PSA before we dive into today's conversation is that our next one on September 26th, so 19 days from today, is going to be in person. So we're typically on Zoom. Our next one is going to be in person at American Title Solutions in Fair Lawn, kind of a central location, where Scott Simon, who's an author of a book called Scare Your Soul, is going to come and speak to us for an hour. And then we're going to do a top agent panel, basically about kind of facing adversity and what it looks like to persevere through adversity, which is kind of be a little bit of a theme of sorts in today's conversation. Carlann has said, can everyone hear the conversation? Amy Guthrie, I can see you. Can you hear us okay? You can give me a thumbs up. Okay, cool. Carlann, the answer is yes. You may need to turn volume up. So PSA on that, if you want information, you should be getting more emails about it, but it is on September 26th in the morning at American Title Solutions in Fair Lawn. All right, so we got some I would say extra special guests today, and so extra special that I'm like, man, Mark, how has it been 3 years before you've had the Porters on a call? So I'll do a brief introduction, but then I'll let you guys jump in. Terri Porter has been doing real estate since I was in grade school, in many forms and fashions, and has grown and thrived through a variety of market cycles. Sharp businesswoman, but I know her more as a caring mother-in-law, family figure. Reese is my brother-in-law, is the reason that I'm in real estate, is my KW sponsor. Yes. It was years ago that I was considering whether higher education was where I needed to stay, and Reese said, I don't know what the future holds, Marks, but I think you should consider real estate, and did a KPA on me, gave me the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, and I owe a lot to this family, but you in particular, Reese, for what you've done for me. They run a team currently of 10. They've been in 3 different cities. They currently operate in 2 different cities. And the scope that I want to give to today's conversation is, I think a lot of us in this business, A, we've only been at it for a little bit of time, and B, we feel as though success has to be linear. I do this, and then I do this, and then I do this, and then I have to stay the same course. But we all know that in reality, we can be whack-a-mole. What about this? What about that? Let me try that. I'm going to abandon this lead source. I'm going to fire this person. Like our paths are far more like this than they are like this. And as I've had a lens on the Porter Group's growth over the last several years, it's not linear. We try new things. We experiment. We experiment in different markets. We try different team structures, and so I'm excited for those of you who are newer, but also those that have been at it for a while to feel not crazy for the journey not being as linear as sometimes we think it is. Reese, Terri, I've talked too much. Tell us a little bit about who you are personally.
Reese, you want me to start?
Yeah, why don't you start, Terri? You've got
okay.
Start from the beginning.
Start from the beginning. Okay.
Yeah.
It was a dark and stormy night, and so back in the late 1990s, we were homeschooling all of our kids, and we went on a long 2-week trip in the middle of nowhere, Idaho, and you just make all kinds of crazy decisions when you're on 2 weeks in the middle of Idaho. And I decided, hey, we're going to put the kids in school, and I'm going to get a job. And I was in an area that couldn't have been riper for real estate. We're in, and still are, in a town that's on the edge of Memphis. The growth heads this way, and it was booming. And so I got my real estate license in 1996. Went with a little boutique company that was in our town. Did really well there under some great mentorship, and then decided that I needed to have a national company, and because everybody thought I just did real estate in one little teeny area because I was in that little boutique company. And so I went to Century 21 for about a cup of coffee and determined that I knew I didn't want to be there, and went to Remax, stayed there for about 9 years, and that was a good run, and I liked Remax. And then Keller Williams came to Memphis. And so I kind of knew Keller from Texas, but I just waited for about a year, made sure that they were, the Keller model here, and that kind of thing. And then joined Keller, and Jay and I were actually investors in that office that was here. And so we were really, really involved, and did that until I don't know, since COVID. I can't remember all the dates exactly right, but I think 2019, Reese, we
I
started
think it was 2020 when
in January.
I think 2020 we decided, in 2021 we became our own brokerage.
Okay. So
we got all our numbers dialed in. So
all the dates are just the last 4 or 5 years. So that's kind of and when I started my business, I was totally new construction, where we were a small town that had a lot of custom builders. No big builders, national builders were in our town. And so I ended up, for the first, probably close to 10 years of my business, 8 to 10 years, until, the financial debacle in 2008, working with about 5 local builders who built a lot of customs. And so I did all that. And then the, the financial debacle happened, and then I turned the business into existing, because new construction was no more. And so that was I was in denial for about 6 months, and then I decided, all right, it's not coming back. And so turned that and reorged the business to do that. So, and from there, it's just been residential real estate all the way.
Just easy linear growth since then.
I should have noted before in my intro that these folks are not from Ohio, in case that wasn't already evident. And for you saying about a cup of coffee, Terry, I'm like, I feel like every time I'm talking about the Reese, there's some new phrase. I'm like, I've never heard it put that way before, but I know what you mean.
Right. Yeah. But there have been a lot of ups and downs, to your point, Mark. But I really feel like if you think about our business, it's kind of like a corkscrew. There's ups and downs, but we just keep moving forward.
Yeah.
It's not like, I don't feel like it's forward and back as much as it's like, okay, we see these things and we might, dive off in different directions or pivot, on something, but it's more like we continue to move forward. It feels like, so.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say there's 2 different types of ups and downs. There's ups and downs that you inflict on yourself because you're, distracted or chasing something, or think you should go a certain way because everybody else is doing it. And then there's ups and downs that are just the market, right? Interest rates go up. All of a sudden, half your buyers can't afford what they think they should. I mean, everybody knows the market ups and downs, but we've had plenty of both of those for sure.
Yeah. No question. Terri, let's kind of hang out in the earlier part of your journey for a little bit. KW kind of like popularized teams, I would say, in my understanding of kind of a history of modern real estate.
Right.
But you were productive before you went to KW. When did you reach the point that you realized I need more help in my world than just me? And talk with us, because some of the people on this call are launching teams right now, or are considering, how do I add people to my world?
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to hear more about kind of the early part of the journey for you.
Sure. Well, excuse me. I'm sorry, getting over a cold. When I left Remax and I went to KW, that I was busy, really had a great business and everything was going really well and stretched to the max, and was at that time looking at hiring. My first hire was going to be an admin. And I did that, went through a few before I figured out what I needed as far as an admin was concerned. And then honestly, in 2011, 2011, we went to family reunion.
Mhm.
And at that time, when you flew out of Memphis, it was, I can't remember where it was. No telling. I feel like it was in Las Vegas. But anyway, when you flew out of Memphis, it was
Where it is this next year.
yeah, is it? So we would drive to Little Rock, which is about a 2.5 hour drive, and then fly. So we went to a family reunion as a group of us from our office who had all been struggling with there weren't enough hours in the day, and we were wearing 16 hats, and we were all tired, and these kind of things. And we get there, and Gary is just, teams, woohoo, teams, And so we flew back and we drove 2.5 hours from Little Rock to Memphis. And all of a sudden, we're going to form teams. We just made the decision. So another agent and I reached out to some Keller people that we knew that were in some of Gary's masterminds and asked them, we said, hey, who would you recommend that we go and see and talk to about teams? And they recommended Linda Alexander in Portland, Oregon. And so another agent and I jumped on a plane and went and spent a week in Portland. And we mirrored 3 different teams that were in her market center because she had been given sort of the, go ahead to try these different things, out of the mastermind. She was trying them with her, agents. And so it was really good to go there and just kind of pick their brains about what they were doing and what they had done and that kind of thing. And so that was a good week, and came back and then started talking through everything that we had seen with other agents that we felt like, or that I felt like, oh, these agents are great agents and we'll work well together. Fast forward, a few years when Reese came on board. And basically all I had was like a referral business with these other agents. I hadn't really developed a good team. I hadn't stepped back and taken the time to really flesh out our organization and that kind of thing. So then Reese came on board and that all changed.
Terri, you sure that was 2011? Because I feel like at that time, Ken and anyway, Kathy were both on the team for a couple of years when I came on.
No, because it was 2010. My husband, Jason,
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
he in 2010 he was downsized out of a job, and then I just said, "Hey, get your real estate license and come on." And it was kind of like, "Oh, yeah, well, we'll just be a team, family team and that kind of thing." And then some other agents. To your point, Reese,
Yeah.
Well, we had been hearing from Gary for a little bit, and then, but when we got to family reunion that year in 2011, that's when we were like, yeah, we're going to move forward with this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just a takeaway for me there, for those that are listening, I think we live in a, I want it now sort of society. Oh, I've got an idea, I just need to go do it. And Terri, to your credit, I've got an idea, I'm thinking about this, I'm going to hop on a plane and I'm going to learn from someone that's doing it at a high level. I think KW, we say we're a models and systems company. Why reinvent a wheel when there's someone that's already out there that's doing something similar or that's one click further? And right. I think it's so we are attracted to the people that are doing the biggest thing ever. Wow, isn't that amazing? But that's not a particularly actionable thing for us. Whereas if I can get an hour or coffee or a shadow day with someone that's 2 clicks ahead of me, I can leave with pages of notes saying these are the things that I need to do right now. So if you're on this call and thinking about what's my next step, there might be a book to read or a conversation to have, but who's already there that you could learn from and shadow. So kudos to you for taking that step. So let's enter Reese. Was that 2012?
No. So that was, Terri had a team for what, 4 or 5 years.
You came in 2015.
Yeah, it was early 2015. I joined the company, And my background was, while Terry got her license in the late 90s, I was like 8 when she got her license, and so for 15 years, I rode around the shotgun of a Lexus, listening to contracts being negotiated, and went to college, got a math degree, married Mark's lovely sister, whom I love very much. We moved to St. Louis. We bought our first house in St. Louis in 2014, and during that process, I realized it was an experienced agent who I'm still friends with today. And I realized in that process, I know more about real estate than this agent does. Maybe not the Missouri contract, but I've seen enough happen. Because I was riding around with Terri, I was working for contractors. I was probably working for her by the time I was 14, doing all kinds of stuff in the new builds and cleaning out, resale residential houses and all that stuff or whatever. And just hearing closing issues and contract issues and repair issues all the time. So anyway, we moved to St. Louis 2012. And I spent about 3 years in sales and decided if I'm going to be in sales, I probably should get into real estate because it's going to come natural or more natural to me. And then that's when I kind of reached out to Terri and asked her, how should I plan for this? How much money should I save up? What should I expect for an income, that kind of thing. And through that process, probably a year and a half, for the first 6 months, Terri was like, don't do it. Don't get into real estate. She didn't want to be to blame for me getting into real estate and not liking it or something. So,
can I press a pin on that for a second?
Yeah.
So Terri, I love that, and there was someone else in my world that was doing a similar thing that I have found to be helpful a few years in now. Tell me why you told Reese not to do it.
Well, there were a lot of levels to that. One was, sometimes it's an easy thing to do something that you kind of grew up with, but it's like he didn't see the whole picture, of real estate. He had seen a lot of it, but not the whole picture. And I thought, oh, I don't know, I don't know if he really would love this or not. And I knew that, what I had done through real estate coming up before we developed a team, before I set boundaries for myself, was work from can to can't, and do all those things. And I didn't want him to fall into that mold either. I don't know, you sort of jump back and all these things that you did, and you're like, oh no, I'm going to save him from that,
Yeah.
I don't want him doing that. That's my baby, And so, but then I think I gave you the Millionaire Real Estate Agent and something else to read, or maybe you had already read them.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, do this, and then let's talk about it, And then finally he said, look, I'm going to do it with you or without you. So what do you want? And I said,
yeah, because I think we had talked about the team a little bit, and that was right around the time expansion was just being talked about. I mean, maybe I went to family reunion with Terri in February 2014, came back and put in my 2 weeks notice at my job, got licensed in 3 days, and it was like, let's go. But that was maybe the first family reunion where expansion was really talked about extensively. We went to ESO really fast. But anyway, during that time, whenever I was thinking about it, that thought had come up. And then I had reached out to Russ Knowlton, who I know was the team lead here in St. Louis. Great guy. I think he works in Denver as well now.
He does.
And I had already set up a meeting with him. And I think I called Terri and said, hey, I'm meeting with the team leader. She's like, no, you're not until I talk to you and we get I'm going to sponsor you. And then all of a sudden she learned all the benefits of it. And from there, the way that I entered, to be brief about it, I mean, there was a lot of stuff happening, but we kind of launched the Porter team at the time, is what it was called, in St. Louis. And it took, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, Terri, for me to kind of tell her, this is not a business worth launching here. It's taking me more work to be a part of this than it is for, the benefit for me. So by the end of 2015, probably 3/4 of the way through, we decided that Terri would pay me a salary. I would spend the next 9 months to a year in Memphis and help her reorganize her business so that we could launch St. Louis. We spent about a year doing that. We launched St. Louis, and then about a year later, or 2 years, 2 or 3 years later, after that process, hiring, developing an ops team, that kind of stuff, is when we decided to launch Denver. And then Denver shut down last year.
Mhm.
Yeah, so there's been it's been interesting. Like St. Louis for us has been kind of icing on the cake because as I operate as the CFO, director of operations, that kind of stuff. A lot of the business I was getting was through my database, and we were just, hey, if business falls in our lap, we'll take it here in St. Louis. I slowly started adding agents who just wanted to be a part of what we were doing, and it's really just been like the last year that we've started to really put some focus back on St. Louis again. Up until then, Memphis being our hub and Denver being kind of the new branch was kind of the focus. Yeah, so 2015 to now, so coming up on 8 years or over 8 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's jump ahead, and then I want to work back. So
Okay.
I think it's always helpful to understand what's your org structure now, and let's kind of talk through the journey of what it took to get you to where you're at. So
Yeah.
Terri in KW Speak is the rainmaker. Reese, you just said you're kind of CFO, director of ops. Who else do you have on the bus, and how'd you get to that?
So right now we're two ops people outside of myself. We have basically a transaction coordinator and a director of operations. We have one of our agents in Memphis is currently rethinking and doing the listing coordination role a little bit, so that we can hire to that soon. And he's our, one of our lead agents in Memphis. He was an ops person before that, so he grew into an agent role. Director of operations has been with us for I think 7 years now. So Terri's definitely the rainmaker and now the broker in Memphis. I'm the rainmaker broker in St. Louis. She operates as kind of our head sales market specialist, to operate more of like kind of the operations CFO role. So as the global company, we're kind of the two heads of an org chart. Outside of those hospitals, we have agents, right? I've got 4 agents here in St. Louis. Terri has 2 others there in Memphis. We've downsized our team quite a bit, and it's grown and gotten amorphous and all that kind of stuff, based on the different things we were trying to do. So now we're 9 or 10 people, 3 ops people, 7 agents between St. Louis and Memphis. Mm-hmm.
And this year, what do you anticipate doing from a sales volume
I knew
standpoint?
you were going to ask that. This is our worst year that I've been a part of the business.
That's true for a lot of people. So this is a
yeah. Well, and we kind of knew that going into this year. Marcus, we had a lot of things happen last year.
Yeah.
One of which was shutting down our Denver branch and other things. So I don't know. I think we're probably somewhere shy of 40 million in volume. Our best year was probably 2 years ago. We did a little over 56 million. And I think our highest year in sides was like 212 sides.
Okay.
But to your point, it's been a run this way, come back, run that way, come back. For a while, we were doing a lot of hedge fund properties in Memphis. And so that was like a whole branch of our business that we had to train out and hire for and that kind of thing. We ended up turning that down because the fees got so high. And also it was taking us away from a business that we knew was reliable, that we wanted to grow. Then Denver became a branch that went well for a while, ended up having to close that down. So this last year has been a revisioning, refocusing, rebuilding year for us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's just which path do I want to go down? Well, let's go down the tactical path first. So you run a more complex business than many people, simply by the fact that Reese, you're sitting in St. Louis right now, and Terri, you're sitting somewhere in the greater Memphis area. I'm assuming that doesn't look like a walnut to me. Talk with us about leads. What are the lead generation levers that you guys are pulling in your business right now? SOI plus what else?
Yeah, Terri. Terri, have you had a lead that wasn't your sphere of influence or a referral from your sphere of influence in the last 18 months?
No.
There you go.
Well, I want to come back. Reese, you answer the question, then I'm going to come back to Terri because that's what I want to learn more.
Yeah, I mean, that's the answer. And honestly, Russ, who ran our Denver branch, turned us on to a book that I'll recommend to anybody. I think it's a great supplement to the MREA book. It's called Ninja Selling by Larry Kendall.
Mhm.
And if you have any desire to be a high quality value adding agent to your friends and family and database, then that book is gold. It is absolute practical gold. So we got Russ turned us onto that 2 years ago about. And we've been through kind of all the shiny objects. We have been full-fledged with Commissions Inc. We've done Boomtown. We've done, all the shiny objects. I promise you, we've tried them or something very similar. And so the refocusing this year is like, we've always been 70% or more database, and we've always been trying to add other lead sources to like grow. And I think we're realizing they're like, oh no, we're database people, and we're really good at it. So let's just double down there. And I think we're seeing, it's hard to tell in this last year since we started this because of just the market shift up and down. But like, I think we're seeing health in ourselves and our agents, kind of with the focus and the simplicity. And I think that our numbers, everything being the same, would be growing at the same time. So yeah, so I've been really right now, outside of a few open houses and sign calls.
Okay.
It is database.
But you're not doing a big spend on Zillow or farming or things like that.
The most expensive thing we do that's digital marketing is we pay for a MailChimp account to send newsletters.
Was it $10 a month?
I think it's $24 a month. Yeah.
Okay.
And like we pay, some creative guys to put together good looking blog posts and to help us with those emails and stuff like that. But I mean, we're probably to hit 3,000 people a month. We're probably spending $400 a month on digital stuff. I mean, not a single.
Are those 3,000 people your SOI, your database? You're not pulling lists from anywhere.
No, yeah, that's between Memphis and St. Louis. And it's kind of interesting. Memphis has got such an older, more seasoned database. There's a lot of people in that database. St. Louis, I've been here for 8 years, and Mark, the girls that I work with are all very community-driven people. We've got like 170 families in our database, and Memphis and us will typically have a similar number of engagements. So like we do events and stuff like that. So it's interesting to see that. But yeah, between the two cities, probably somewhere around 3,000 as far as newsletters go.
So
on email.
Let's just go deeper on that a minute.
Okay.
Oftentimes people who run database-driven businesses, and for those that are from legacy, think of Marcy Klee. She's been licensed for 47 years. She runs a totally database-driven business. And she's a fantastic person. Like, to know Marcy is to love her. Everyone knows her. She's great. That is unhelpful for someone who's new and not Marcy. So similarly, Terri, you might be the Marcy of Memphis in some ways. Like, to know you is to love you. You're fantastic. But tell me something that Aaron Roby, who I can see on here, could seek to replicate and influence in his business, because he's actually a terrible person.
Terri, do you want to answer that one? I have a thought, but
Go ahead with your thought, and then I'll come back. I'll dive in.
Yeah, Mark, I was thinking about this because you sent some thoughts over earlier, and I was thinking about just lead generation and shiny objects and that kind of thing. I think I think self-awareness is a really big thing when it comes to lead generation. I was at the family reunion one year, and I think it was Steve Schluter, who some of you might have heard or taken a class from, was talking about the different, lead generation levers you can pull, open houses, all that kind of stuff. And he gave the example of a guy who was like really awkward in public, didn't like talking, meeting and greeting people, was older, wasn't going to be super big on like digital stuff, whatever. And his whole lead generation strategy was to write handwritten letters, not postcards, like letters to his database, and had one of the better businesses in his office, right? And that's where I think Terri and I are learning a lot right now, is that like, for yourself, if first of all, are you a database type person, right? Are you the kind of person who, like, if you weren't working, you're going to be at the soccer practice talking to other parents? You know what I mean? Like, or are you going to be like, I hate going to this stuff, right? Or would you rather sit in a room and make 500 phone calls to leads that come from the internet? Because that's a real viable business plan, and where you're going to get energy from. And I think what we've learned over the years is that if, with the shiny objects, especially with lead generation, if you're not excited about the process of following up on those leads, doing that business, then don't spend any money on it because you're not going to do it. You know, you're going to find some other way to be busy. That being said, if you're that type of person, and I think Terri could probably attest to this because I think she went through it. But knowing what I know now, I would much rather be at a soccer practice or an open house and be talking to people than be calling internet leads or something like that. And so, you know, if I didn't have a big database right now, which I really don't, but if I didn't have a good database that was referring deals to us and I wanted a database business, you know, one of the things I think about a lot is like the best way to add somebody to your database is to make them a past client because they're trusted, they know you as a business person and they've worked with you before and they'll probably give you a referral. And, you know, if you're a people person and you're a database type person, then I would sit on an open house as often as I possibly could and just get in front of people. And like, I think the benefit of that is open houses are so low risk. You can make an absolute fool of yourself in front of somebody and never see them again, right?
Yeah.
And you'll learn which scripts you need. You'll learn which data points you need to be aware of and how, like, if you're curious and you want to grow and you want to run a business, like you'll learn what it is that you need to do that open house. Well, you don't need to learn 50 scripts to go into an open house. You probably need like one, you know, it's like, are you working with an agent? There's your first script. Like, you know, so that's what I would say. If you're a database type person, then find a way to get in front of people in a real estate manner. And that might be open houses. It might be, you know, broker tours, whatever. I don't know. But Terri, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying. And I think that it took me a long time to get to the party with the database business because I didn't really, to be honest with you, Mark, kind of put it all together that I would be a realtor as I went. Like it's as you go that you become a realtor and that you build that database because it's so relational. And I separated my life, you know, into, okay, I'm a realtor now. Okay, now I'm the mom. I'm at the ball fields. I'm doing this. And there was a long time that I did not put all that really together, you know, because I would go to work. I'm one of those people, I really need to go to the office. I can't, I don't work well at home, you know, so I'm not at the office now though, because there's meetings going on. So there you go. But I get up every morning and I would get in the office and I would, you know, just start my work, you know, by making my calls and doing my stuff. And then after I kind of put it all together, you know, years later and realized, hey, man, this is as I go. This is my life. This is my life. I don't want to change my lifestyle. I want my lifestyle. You know, I'm passionate about what I do and I love it. And I think that's one of the things that you've really got to be passionate about what you do. And people realize that and they see enthusiasm, and enthusiasm is attractive. Yep. And so I think that's a big part of people trusting you in real estate is that. So I would just say, like Reese said, if it's not exciting for you to do, you know, X, then do Y that's exciting, because we all know everybody has their different spheres that they travel in and that they work in. And, you know, and he was exactly right. You know, when I went to Century 21, I left there because at that time, Cardis was a big relocation company and they were, you know, married together. And so they just wanted me to do relocation. And that was great because I got all these leads. But I realized after 8 months, I thought, I'm not building anything. I'm working for them. I'm an employee. You know, I'm not an independent contractor, and I'm not going to have anything when I leave here, you know, doing that. And it was the same thing with the hedge fund and just the, you know, the grind of doing that. We didn't have a good plan on that hedge fund business for a great follow-up with the rental market that it was creating. So that was kind of tough, you know, there. So that's why we just said, no, that's not, you know, we don't see that taking us to another level down the road, which our database business will take you there, you know. And I think that if like Reese said, if you're that person that can smile and dial and make all your calls and then get the business and follow up and then have that plan with them, then that's great, you know. But I'd just rather do life and do real estate and you know, keep it all together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to punctuate something that I mean, the point that you guys are kind of making together. Yeah, I think a lot of us feel like, oh, well, when you're in real estate sales, you got to knock on doors, or you got to cold call, or you got to take internet leads or whatever. And the truth is that a healthy business is going to have a few different places. I do open houses, and I've got an SOI, and I'm part of this networking group, whatever. So you don't want to be undiversified, and at the same time, to your point, like, you're going to be more effective. You're not going to as likely to burn out, and you're going to have more fun in the business if you're doing something that's in your natural path of enjoyment and skill, with the note that every source is going to have its version of repetitious boredom. Even a database driven business is like writing a letter like that guy did, is like, oh, that's touching. But I'm sure there were days where he's like, I do not feel like writing this letter. My hands are exhausted from this. And even if it's better than cold calling strangers, I think sometimes there's so many of us that are in this industry because it's an easy check. And no, every version of lead generation is going to have its suck. And Jeff Glover will say that you fall in love with the repetitious boredom of the lanes that you're working in, and I just think that's crucial. You guys have clearly done that over time.
Man, Jeff Glover, the perfect example of somebody who's not database, right? Like, or at least didn't start out that way. He was for sale by owners.
He's become much more that way, but you're right.
Right. Yeah. But he spent 8 years doing nothing but calling for sale by owners, and was the best in the world at it for a couple of years, and maybe still is. Yeah, that's a good point.
Then he went. He was in town a couple of weeks ago. And then he was sharing he was spending $1 million across his kind of lead gen platforms on billboards and radio, and he's like, I need to rein this in because I'm making like $1 an hour. Now he's running a much more database kind of value to database driven business. So similarly, I like the corkscrew more than the up and down, Terry. I think that's a good.
And I'll tell you this, whenever I started real estate, I didn't have anybody to mentor me really into it. I just thought it'd be I thought it'd be, it was fun. It was charismatic and everything. But the older agents at my office allowed me to sit on their houses. And for 2 straight years, every Sunday, I sat an open house. That's how I started my business. For 2 years, it was every Sunday. I know Reese remembers that.
Oh, yeah.
Be like, they were in ball, and they'd have a tournament, and then that championship game was always on Sunday, and they always made it. And so I was always coming in hot to the ball field because I'd been at an open house. But that's what started my business. Was that.
Mary Hopi just commented she loves open houses. Mary, you've been crushing it at those, and I think that can feel like, oh, it's an old-fashioned way of doing things. And there was a year or two where it's like open houses aren't really happening because of COVID and how fast homes are selling. But they're in our market, they're back right now. And not that you have to do those, but find what works and stick to it. Talk with me, kind of shifting gears a little bit. I think.
Mark, can I say something to that about database business real quick?
Yep, please.
I think something that I've realized over the years too is, Glover, for instance, starting out with for sale by owners, eventually getting to a database driven business. It's cost effective once you have it, right? It's a lot easier to have leads and to have relationships. It's more cost effective to have relationships than it is to buy leads all the time. But there's 1,000 ways to feed your database, right? To bring people into your database. You can do it through leads, past clients, you can do open houses, you can do events, you can do all kinds of stuff. I think the important thing with a database business is that you have some sort of system to keep them from falling out the back door. Because I think a lot of people, for sell by owners, internet leads, that kind of thing, they do the deal and then they leave that person, they're abandoned. Well, that's a past client that hopefully had a good experience with you. If you can stay in touch with them, you're growing your database every day of the week by doing business. And I think in addition to that, the thing that I've realized about database business is that there's a momentum with database business as you're creating a community, and it happens at different levels depending on how big your database is and how big your team is and that kind of thing. But there's a momentum that happens there naturally once you get some movement that doesn't really happen as much in just churn and burn, other types of lead generation business. I think you stop going to open houses, you're not going to get any more leads, right?
What's your favorite touch to your database? Is it an event? Is it a mailing? Is it a particular type of call, gift? What do you guys love to do?
Terri, what's yours?
Both cracked a silly smile when I asked that question.
Well, I wasn't a big event person. And then a couple of years ago, Reese said, well, it's because you never really did them well. So there you go,
They suck, Mom.
Yeah.
And so, in Memphis, we have 3 events a year. We do a movie. Okay, so we rent out the movie theater and we invite our database to the movie in the spring whenever the movies hit in like May. We pick a really good one, and then we have a big food drive here for the Memphis Food Bank. And everybody loves to give, and that's just such a great, good feeling event that's benefiting that. And then we have a big party at the end of the year, and so Reese and Monica, who's in St. Louis as well, they have gotten that event just down, and we have wonderful. Hang on, they do.
She's so proud of me.
We mail invitations, and we have
Yeah.
cool looking invitations that we send out, and we send out save the date, and just have a lot around it. And after you do that every year and you have it at a wonderful place, it is so fun. I love that because everybody loves to come. You get to see everybody. Last year, I had people call me and say, "Hey, can I bring so and so? Because I would really love for you to meet them." I'm like, "Yeah, bring them." And it was so cool to meet those people in that environment with all the people that know you and love you and trust you. There's no better way to get in front of somebody and have them be comfortable with you than to bring them into your family like that. So it was great. Those events are wonderful. So
what tips?
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Go
Reese.
ahead. No, you go ahead.
Okay. I was going to ask, so some people on here are teams that operate close to the scale that you guys are, and then some are solo, and I think sometimes a solo agent can hear that like, "Oh, that's cool, you have an ops team, that's great, that you can do that." So what advice would you have for someone that's not in a position to operate at the scale that you're at as it relates to value to their database or maybe events?
Yeah. I would say a couple of things. One, I think Terry was kind of alluding to this, like if you're going to do an event, make it worth their time. Don't try to get somebody to come show up to an event they don't want to come to. All you're doing is burning relational fuel there and causing the next conversation you have with them to be harder. So, and that I think your point, Mark, is very good. Like we have a budget for that. We're a team. We're in 2 different cities. Honestly, we take everything that we were spending on digital ads and put it towards those events. And probably to be real candid, it costs us about $7,000 per city for our end of the year big event. And that's like food, heavy hors d'oeuvres, open bar, come hang out, And I think we had 180 people at our last one of a database of like 150 families. So people enjoy it, But if you can't do that, as far as like favorite database touches, I would say as it goes to events, like I have a friend who had a really good philosophy on gift giving. He's like, never give a gift that always give a gift where whatever your budget is, you can buy the best version of that gift, right? So if you have a $20 budget for a gift, like buy them a pair of socks. You can buy them the coolest pair of socks I've ever had. Don't try to buy them a $20 tablet, And I would say the same thing with events. Like make it small and intentional if it needs to be small and intentional, but make it the best version of that you can. And maybe it's just like one of our events in St. Louis is that we rent out the pavilion for $150 next to the farmers market on the Saturday towards the end of school year. So like sometime in May. So like all the energy and all the vibe that needs to be at the party is already there for the farmers market. We have the pavilion right next door and we bring coffee and we say, "Hey, come say hey to us. We'll give you a cup of coffee. We're going to do a drawing for a free, picnic wagon." And then, we have 120 people show up to that and then go hang out in the farmers market. So piggyback on something else that's already happening if you can. If you've only got 10 people that are going to show up, go to something like a farmers market or a food truck Friday or yoga in the park and try to just get a little community started, Secondly, if you don't have the wherewithal to plan an event and all that, because it does take some time and details and thought and energy and communication to your database, I would say the second most beneficial touch, and this is one that we're trying to crank up more often, is a concept we call it that Larry Kendall in that book, Ninja Selling, calls the annual review. And he basically speaks about the fact that everybody in your database should have a file. You should have, their MLS data on their house, know where they live, know what it's worth, know how many bedrooms there are. You should know how many kids they have. Are they in a good school district? Do they need to be moving to a new school district soon? Are they going through a divorce? Are they getting a new job? Is their job shrinking? Is their work shrinking? Is their work growing? Like, these are things that if you're really in touch with their database, you're going to know. And then once a year, doing an annual review with them and approaching them. And really what it looks like is just calling them and saying, hey, listen, for our friends, clients, past clients, we like to make sure that they're taken care of on their real estate needs. I have a file for you, and it has comps, valuations of your property. And if you'd like, I can come present it to you, and we can talk about like what you want to accomplish in real estate this year. And so we talk about deferred maintenance. We talk about, you know, do you have enough equity to be able to leverage that for a home project you want to do or something like that? You know, options to access the equity in their home. We're like legitimately trying to meet with them once a year to advise them on managing their most valuable asset.
I love
right?
that. We
And
go ahead.
Well, I was saying it's really powerful. And you know, of the ones that we've done, you see a lot of referral and a lot of interest from those. People appreciate it greatly.
I was just going to say, for those at Legacy last month at our team meeting, we had a conversation about kind of building your wealth advisory team and viewing yourself. How do I treat my clients as clients for life as opposed to transactions? And what you're doing there is kind of akin to what a financial advisor would do. Let's get together for our annual meeting. Let's talk about the state of your portfolio. This is the same thing, just tailored to real estate. That's so valuable.
Exactly. Well, and like how many of you actually met with your financial advisor this year?
Right.
You know, like so few, right? And Mark, to be honest with those conversations, when I've done them, it's, you know, I'll show up, we run property management as well, like you, as you know. And so I'll show up with, hey, here's what I would list your house at in its current condition. If we were going to list it and you're trying to get most of my money, here's some of the projects I would recommend before we list. Here's how much equity you have in your home. Here's what I would rent your house for if y'all decided to buy and keep this house, right? But most of the time I show up with all those things, and it takes me 25 minutes to put it together before the meeting. And I'll start with like, well, what are y'all's hopes and dreams for real estate this year? And then I don't have to say another word for the next hour and a half, right? And they've just told me everything that they know about what they want to do in real estate. And guess who they're going to call the next time they have a question about one of those things? They're already an hour and a half conversation down the road with me. They're not going to call somebody else and then fill them on all of that and then do that, you know. So you're getting ahead of the real estate deal by loving and serving them as best you can.
Totally. Yeah, such a great point. You've got mind share when you have that sort of meeting. I want to ask one more question, and then I want to give a little bit of space for any questions that our attendees have. So running a multi-city team, but also running a team where you're related to one another, has its set of joys and complexities. The highs can be higher and the challenges can be greater. What have you learned about rhythms? What types of meetings do we need to make sure we have? What sorts of boundaries are helpful for us to set when we're, hey, this is family vacation mode, not business talk mode? Like, what have you learned in your 8 years in being in business together that would help those who are either considering it or doing something similar right now?
Yeah. Okay, Terry, I'll take it. Go ahead, Terry.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, maybe I should walk out of the room for a minute.
No. So it's really key, you know, because you're family and because you have a history with one another, you can assume a lot of things because there's experiential knowledge within your family, but you don't need to do that. You know, you need to keep business and family for sure. And that's super important. But communication on both those sides is super important. Just keeping the lines of communication open and not assuming anything. Because especially when we're in two different cities and being family, that's a little tough sometimes, you know. So because you know, we're going to see each other every holiday, and
yeah, that's part of the difficulty is I can't go on a work trip without seeing family. And also the great part is when I go on a work trip, I get to spend time with family, you know.
Yeah, double-edged sword.
Yeah, and I think, Mark, honestly, it's just kind of a pressure, like family relationships is really just a pressure cooked version of any other relationship you have prior to going to business together. So like you may have a best friend, like one of the people that we work with in Memphis is my best friend since 4th grade, right? Like, and awesome guy, loving. And there are hard parts about that. But like he and I, we don't talk about friendship stuff before 5 o'clock in the evening. Like if he calls me at 3 o'clock, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that's about business and I need to answer it. You know, because it's hard to be busy and then take a phone call from a friend. But it's like, oh, they also work with us, and or a mom or whatever. And so I know if Terry's calling me at 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock or something, like, one, it's either like it's my mom calling and I need to answer it, or it's the owner of my business calling and we got to talk business. So I think real simple things like that. I mean, we try to set those same standards for our ops team. Like, hey, agents, don't text your ops team at 6 o'clock on a weekday. Like, if you got something they need to know and you want them to have it first thing in the morning, then email it to them. They'll see it at 8 a.m. Like all the other offices are closed anyway. So stuff like that. But yeah, I think what would be helpful and what we could do better at, although I think we do a decent job, is just like business is business and family is family. And if you find those things mixing, then I would figure it out real fast, because it probably is only going to get uglier and more mixed as you go along.
Yeah, no, that's a good word. I don't think there's anyone that's doing it perfectly. And the temptation is always, hey, I'm passionate about my business. I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm thinking about it more than just someone who's punching a clock. And so of course it's more likely to bleed over anyway. But how do we preserve our existing relationships and cherish those along the way?
Yeah, and to that point, real quick, like Terry and I being family, I think we can be so much more lockstep on vision and mission because we come from the same family than a lot of people can. So that's a huge benefit, right? There's less communication that has to happen because we're just on the same page a lot of times. So you kind of have to make sure that enough communication happens, although it may feel like you don't need to.
Folks on the Zoom, unmute. Who's got questions? I could always ask more, but I'd love to hear from some of you or some of y'all as a support of myself.
Thanks, Mark.
Try to be culturally appropriate. Use guys.
I started texting and emailing you guys instead of y'all in the last couple of years.
So. Northern-fied.
That's right.
There you go.
Don't all jump at once. I can call on someone, but people have their videos off these days, so it's hard to know.
It's hard to know. But yeah. I'll say one of the, can I say something while people are waiting?
Please.
I think we found out over the course of the years of us developing teams that we don't all want to wear a lot of hats, but we want high capacity people. And that's our culture, kind of, to have high capacity people. So we stay smaller and tighter, and the smaller your team, not being huge for us, has worked out really well because the communication is easier amongst a smaller group of people. When I was at Keller Williams, I was the broker there in the Germantown, Tennessee office for 3 years, and I had 89 agents. And it was a real learning experience, and kind of told me what it was like. It was great, because I saw things that I would never have seen had I not done that. And so as we've built and kind of had the trajectory for our team, what we want it to look like, we've kind of come across that as one of the characteristics, really, of a person, is that they fit our culture and they have a decent amount of capacity within them. So
yeah, capacity talent as opposed to cul-de-sac talent, right?
Yeah.
So crucial, particularly in a downshifted market where you need to make sure you're getting the most out of every seat on the bus. More is not always more at any time, but particularly in a downshifted market, I need to have confidence that everyone's pulling their weight. And I think a lot of businesses got fat in 20 and 21 that are like having to look in the mirror and say, does this work? I'm over invested right now.
I think we all saw that, and it was easy. It was an easy thing to do for a lot of people. And if you didn't have a focus and a vision about where you were going and where you wanted to stay, then it was easy to just, yeah. So.
Yeah, no question. Any thoughts or questions for the group? Mary, it looks like you're enjoying a nice day out there on the dock. Right place to be. Awesome, folks. Well, Reese, Terri, thank you so much. I have admired both of you in the way that you run your business and the way that you still love each other in the midst of all the joys and challenges. So thank you for coming and sharing your journey with us. As just a reminder to the room, September 26th, you'll get emails about it. And this is recording, so we'll be sending this out after the fact as well. Appreciate y'all. Have a good one.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks.